The Russian Orthodox elder Anatoly of Optina once wrote, "If people in the world knew how hard it is to live in a monastery, they would not come, even if they were compelled with a stick. They would sooner go barefoot so long as they could stay in the world. But if they knew what a reward is laid up for monastics in heaven, they would drop everything and go to monasteries."
The monk's job is to repent and to pray. His witness to the world is simply who he is. The monk isn't seeking for any kind of power or authority. He's not seeking for any degree of great comfort in his life or vacations or entertainment. His very appearance is strikingly different from everyone else around him. The monk witnesses to something else, something other than this world, that there is something that's worth living for, that is not in this world. There's something that can bring great peace and transformation to a man that does not involve the common things that the world sees as worthwhile. As Saint Seraphim of Sarov said, "Acquire the peace of God in your heart, and 1,000 souls around you will be saved." This is what we do as monks. This is what we strive to do, to pray, to repent of our sinfulness, to become closer to Christ. And in that process, the world begins to change.
No advantages do you offer those who love you, O world. All who draw near to you do you seduce with your treasures and with all your delights. But in the day of death, both the fair countenance of the beautiful and the might of the strong will be cast down into the grave. Oh, if only I had never set foot in you, O world, that deceives all who enter. Blessed is he who has torn your snares asunder. He shall inherit the habitation of joy. Righteous art thou, O Lord, and righteous is thy judgment that condemns the world and those who love it. Therefore do I pray thee, that thy right hand which pulled Simon out of the sea might also pull me out of the ways of this world that rise up against me. I have become mired in filth. The waters of the world are drowning me. They do not let me break loose to catch my breath. May thy cross, O Lord, be my staff and my support on the path along which I walk.
We use the imagery of a man who's in a dark closet and he thinks he's just fine. He thinks he's very healthy and dressed well and well-groomed. But when he begins to open the door to that closet and the light from the outside begins to come in, he begins to see himself as he really is. He begins to see the sores on him and his dirty clothes and his general appearance. That's sort of the spiritual life. It's what happens in the monastery. A man thinks he's pretty much together. He's living a good life. He's pretty virtuous. And then he becomes a monk and he begins to really pray and spend time alone in his cell. And then he begins to see all this ugliness. And what's happening is the light of Christ is coming into his darkness. And that's a very important process that has to take place. And if it doesn't take place, then the man really can't grow. He can't grow closer to Christ. Often when men come to the monastery, they're very enthusiastic. Often God will grant them spiritual comfort and consolation and prayer in order to attract them to himself. And oftentimes, after a while in the monastery, that seems to go away. And they begin to experience dryness in prayer and emptiness and hard-heartedness. They feel abandoned by God. But the monastic fathers actually tell us that God does indeed grant us special graces at certain times and reveal something of himself in a more tangible way that's very pleasing to us and comforts us. But that comfort isn't for all the time. The real spiritual growth takes place when he does not grant us those special graces. Real spiritual growth takes place when our prayer is dry, when it's difficult to stand through the church services, when we fall asleep during our spiritual reading, when we can't keep our mind focused at our cell rule or when we're praying in church. This process that goes on during the long monastic church services is very much a part of our life. If we had nothing but consolation all the time, we really wouldn't grow. In fact, we'd grow weaker. Prayer, whether it's in the cell or whether it's in the church, is a great time of struggling with himself and with his own thoughts and his own desires, or with the demons attacking him and suggesting things to him, his own flesh being tired and worn out or wanting to go to sleep. If we persevere and we say to ourselves, no matter what, I am going to continue to pray, I'm going to continue to struggle, no matter how difficult it is, no matter how many times I fall, I'm going to just keep getting up. This is what changes us, this is what transforms us.
What shall we offer thee, O Christ, inasmuch as thou hast appeared on earth as a man for our sake.
Divine obedience is something so necessary for the true pleasing of God that without it, it is not possible to please him. Therefore obedience was planted by God in 3 places, in the heavens, in paradise, and on earth. In the heavens, all the heavenly powers, remaining by their good will in obedience to God, were vouchsafed to remain eternally in Him. But the devil, by his own free will, fell away from obedience, and was cast down from the heavens, together with all the fallen away powers who freely obeyed his impious counsel. In paradise, as long as the first created ones remained in obedience to God, they took sweet enjoyment in beholding God face to face. But when, of their own free will, obeying the counsel of the devil and falling away from obedience, they became proud, desiring to be equal to God, then they received the sentence of death and were banished from paradise, and were the cause of death for the whole human race. On earth, Christ, the Son of God, having come down from heaven to do the will of the Father who sent him, planted his divine obedience in his holy disciples. Remaining in it even unto death, they were enabled by their preaching to bring the world to the knowledge of God. But the thrice cursed Judas, who fell away from obedience, and in place of the Lord obeyed the devil, fell into despair, hanged himself, and perished eternally. This divine obedience, planted by Christ in his holy disciples, passed over to the holy monastic order, in which many shone forth like the sun and pleased God perfectly. And indeed the whole monastic order is founded upon holy obedience, and in ancient times for the greater part they began their life with obedience, and thus by God's grace they escaped demonic deceptions. But for those who have begun the monastic life in a self-willed manner, there have often followed many demonic deceptions, from which may the Lord deliver us by his grace. Obedience is the mother of the foundation of all the gospel commandments, namely love, which is made perfect by obedience, as the Lord has said, "If ye love me, you will keep my commandments." Divine obedience is such a great virtue before God that, according to the common teaching of many saints, the cutting off of their own will and understanding in everything before the superior is reckoned by Christ as a mental and voluntary shedding of blood for his name.
O Lord and Master of my life, a spirit of idleness, despondency, ambition, and idle talking, give me not. But rather a spirit of chastity, humble-mindedness, patience, and love, bestow upon me thy servant. Yea, O Lord King, grant me to see my failings, and not condemn my brother, for blessed art thou to the ages of ages. And people come to the monastery, and oftentimes it's a very naive approach. They really think the monastery is just filled with saints, and that the brothers never have disagreements, and everybody's very angelic. We're called to be saints, and we're called to be like the angels, but we're still human beings. And that humanness comes out perhaps all too strongly sometimes. So there'll be disagreements and jealousies and petty arguments. That sometimes can be enough to make someone just abandon monastic life, because it wasn't what they wanted. It wasn't what they thought it was. They thought they were going to live with a bunch of angels and saints. Often what it is they thought they were going to live with a bunch of people who were going to allow them to do what they wanted to do all the time. And when they're not allowed to do that, they begin to think of these other people as being selfish. That's an important transition also, from seeing your brothers high up on a pedestal to seeing your brothers in a realistic way, as men who are seeking after God above everything else, but they still have faults, they're still human beings, and they still fall down, and they get back up again. And entering into that whole process of